People who speak multiple languages, tell us your funniest story when folks didn't know you understood them. My buddy once jokingly asked a waitress in Chinese for the secret menu. She straight up brought it out. Turns out those things are real. My brother's wife is from China, and she says Western-style Chinese food has almost nothing to do with what Chinese people actually eat. My friend's son speaks fluent Spanish, but he's as white as Wonder Bread. One time he drove his wife's minivan to a car wash near the US-Mexico border. The worker started talking trash about him in Spanish, saying he was dumb, messy, and should have just made his kids clean the car instead. Then they added that Americans are stingy potato lords and probably wouldn't tip. When the car was ready, he thanked them in flawless Spanish for doing a great job, just to make sure they knew he'd heard everything. When I was a kid, my German family went on vacation to Greece. We walked into a shop, and my grandfather started loudly ranting in German about how everything there was junk and overpriced. Then my mom found something she liked, and the shop owner came over, speaking German. My grandpa's face was priceless. I speak Spanish. One time my family and I were at a Mexican restaurant, and the trainee waiter whispered to the senior waiter that his English wasn't good enough to handle us. I told him in Spanish that I'm helped translate for my mom who doesn't speak Spanish. He looked so relieved. We chatted a bit and I told him not to worry. If I could learn Spanish while living in Mexico, then he could definitely learn English in the US. Plus, most people are happy to help. I was waiting in a crosswalk in a small Japanese town when a girl told her friend that the tall foreigner, me, had really nice eyelashes and she wished she could borrow them. I thanked her in Japanese. She instantly turned tomato red. I don't know sign language fluently, but one night at my favorite bar, someone tried to introduce me to an old deaf mute guy. I signed a simple, "How are you?" Nothing, so I signed, "Have a good evening." Again, nothing. Turns out the dude wasn't deaf at all. He didn't know a single sign. He was just pretending so people would buy him drinks. Sneaky potato wizard. My brother, who's very pale and about 193 centimeters tall, once served as a provincial ambassador in Hokkaido, Japan. He and his friend, a former cowboy covered in tattoos who'd lost 2 fingers in a rodeo accident, went traveling around Honshu to visit a castle. In Japan, tattoos are often linked to the yakuza, and missing fingers can be a sign of mafia discipline, so they already looked intimidating. While walking around the castle grounds, some young Japanese guy started yelling at them, pointing at his own shortened finger and basically warning them to watch out. Clearly he thought they wouldn't understand, but my brother speaks fluent Japanese, including the local dialect. He politely told the guy to show more respect to the guests of his country. At that moment, his cowboy buddy rolled up his sleeves, revealed all the tattoos, and waved his 2-finger missing hand right in front of the guy's face. The poor kid went sheet white, bowed lower than humanly possible, and started backing away, bowing over and over until he literally disappeared from sight. My boyfriend and I went to Japan. We're both tall, very obviously foreign, and stood out in every crowd. Nobody really expects outsiders there to know Japanese. One time, we were just waiting at a crosswalk, and this little kid holding his mom's hand stared up at my 6-foot-tall boyfriend and said, "Wow, foreigners are so cool, right?" We cracked up later, and honestly, stuff like that happened all the time. Sometimes, I even scared people just by existing. It was hilarious. I once went to a sushi place in Tokyo with a friend who doesn't speak a word of Japanese. The waiter started rattling off a ton of recommendations, obviously assuming we were clueless foreigners. I responded in perfect Japanese, quoting a few obscure Edo-era dishes just to mess with them. The waiter stopped mid-sentence, blinked, and then smiled nervously. He spent the rest of the evening checking with the kitchen before suggesting anything, like every single dish. It was kind of funny seeing him second-guess every assumption about us because he realized we actually understood everything. I once tried to impress a Japanese friend by speaking only in Keigo, polite or formal Japanese, at a dinner. I thought it would make me sound respectful and cultured. Big mistake. She kept correcting me, laughing, and finally explained that I was technically correct but sounded way too stiff, like a robot or a formal announcement at a ceremony. By the end of the night, I switched back to casual speech, and we were both laughing so hard that the waiter came over to see what was happening. I was visiting Kyoto and decided to take a night walk through a famous temple. I got there just as it was closing, so the place was almost empty. I saw a path leading into a garden that was dimly lit by lanterns. Thinking it was part of the public area, I wandered in. Suddenly, I heard chanting and realized I had accidentally walked into a monk's evening meditation session. I froze, but the monks didn't seem to notice me at first. Eventually, one monk gently motioned me out. I apologized and backed out slowly. Moral of the story? Always check the signs in temples, or you might end up meditating involuntarily. Most people have no clue I speak Spanish fluently. My husband and I were on vacation in Mexico and walked into this restaurant. They gave us menus in English. I flipped mine over and boom, exact same menu in Spanish, but the prices were almost half. So I ordered in Spanish, hoping they'd honor the local prices. Total Galaxy brand moment. Once, I was grocery shopping when two guys walked up and asked me in English where the ice cream was. I happened to be heading that way anyway, so I showed them. As soon as they grabbed their ice cream, they switched into terrible Swedish, which happens to be my native language. They complained about how rude I was for not just telling them instead of walking them there. So I answered in Swedish, I was going there myself. Why would I just tell you? They both went ghost white, clutched their ice cream, and noped out of there fast. And yep, this was in Sweden. They had zero reason to think I wouldn't understand them. We were at a theater in Sao Paulo waiting for a show to start. A group of teenage girls nearby was mocking everyone around them in French. I stayed quiet until they started making snarky comments about my mom's looks. My mom doesn't speak French, but I do. Not perfectly, but enough. So I leaned over and very loudly said, "S'il vous plaît," with all the sass I could muster. Their faces went through every color of the rainbow. Turns out they weren't even French, just local wannabes who thought no one in Brazil could understand them. Nobody talks bad about my mom. A couple of Japanese cashiers were gossiping about whether my wife's red hair was natural. As we left, I casually told them in Japanese that it was dyed, but I added, "Don't tell my wife." Another time, I went to a pub with two neighbors. One of them was studying American Sign Language in college. She noticed an older man sitting alone and said, "He's deaf. You can tell by how he looks around and carries himself." She went over, tapped him on the shoulder, and ended up chatting with him in sign for almost an hour. I've never seen anyone so happy. It was honestly beautiful. One night, I went to a local pub with my two roommates. One of them had studied American Sign Language in college. She noticed an older man sitting quietly at the bar and told us, "He's deaf. You can tell by how he's watching people and how he carries himself." He didn't even order a drink. It was just brought to him right away, so he clearly was a regular. My roommate insisted she was right, so she went over, tapped him gently on the shoulder, and started a conversation in sign language. And then they ended up chatting for nearly an hour. I swear I'd never seen anyone look so happy. The guy lit up completely. It was honestly heartwarming. When my brother was working as a provincial ambassador in Hokkaido, he and his friend, a former cowboy missing 2 fingers thanks to a bad run-in with a bull and covered in tattoos, went traveling around Honshu to see some sights. In Japan, tattoos are strongly associated with the yakuza, and missing finger joints, that's basically a tradition in the mafia hierarchy. The higher you go, the shorter your finger. So while visiting a castle, some young Japanese guy started shouting at them, showing off his own chopped fingertip, basically warning them to be careful around him. Probably thought these foreigners wouldn't understand a thing. But my brother speaks fluent Japanese, even the local dialect. He politely told the guy to show respect to the guests of his country. Meanwhile, his cowboy buddy rolled up his sleeves, revealed all his tattoos, and waved the hand missing 2 fingers right in the guy's face. Poor guy went ghost white, bowed as low as he could, and started backing away, bowing, stepping back, bowing again until he completely disappeared from sight. During a trip to Osaka, I tried to order food in Japanese at a tiny local ramen shop. I thought I nailed it, confidently saying, "I'll have the tonkotsu ramen, please." The chef stared at me blankly for a few seconds, then nodded and said something fast in Japanese. I had no idea what he said, so I just smiled and nodded. When the ramen arrived, it was vegan. I didn't realize that I had accidentally said vegetarian version instead of the regular tonkotsu. I ate it anyway, and it was surprisingly good, but I've never ordered food in Japanese without triple checking the word since. My wife is Norwegian and speaks like 11 languages at different levels. Her best story comes from her student years in Prague. She and her Czech friends were at a bar when a group of drunk Norwegian dudes sat at the next table. They instantly started flirting in English with a very thick accent, but when they switched to Norwegian between themselves, they started rating the girls' body parts, bragging about how tonight's definitely gonna be fun time, and describing in detail what they do in bed. My wife calmly translated everything into Czech for her friends. The Czech girls played along, got more flirty, the guys bought them drinks, and the Norwegians were convinced they were winning. Hours later, the girls just decided to bounce. The dudes were super confused. That's when my wife looked them dead in the eye and said in perfect Norwegian, "Nice meeting you, good luck." She said their faces turned 50 shades of tomato before she left. I'm Norwegian. Once I was in London waiting for the elevator with my girlfriend. Behind me, 2 Swedish girls were chatting away, not realizing I could understand them. They were saying I was handsome, that they wouldn't mind spending quality time with me if I asked, and that my girlfriend wasn't good enough for me. When the elevator arrived, I turned around, thanked them in Norwegian for the compliments, and added that my girlfriend was much more beautiful than both of them. They suddenly weren't so eager to get in the elevator anymore. I understand Spanish pretty well, though I'm not fluent. Once I went to a quinceañera with my friend. It had been a rough day and my anxiety was through the roof. A middle-aged man at our table started openly talking about me in Spanish, saying I had crazy eyes and that something was off about me. My friend calmly told him that I understood everything. He shut up real fast. I live in Canada, half French speaking. Plenty of funny situations, but the most unforgettable one happened the other way around. My dad once shouted across a crowded supermarket in French that his butt was bleeding and he urgently needed the bathroom. He assumed nobody would understand. At least 3 people turned around with faces of pure horror. I just shrugged. What can you do? The man's got hemorrhoids and zero shame. Totally not my fault. Still, our family will never ever forget that moment. My boyfriend and I went to Japan, and as two tall white people, we stood out a lot. Nobody expected us to speak Japanese. Once, while we were waiting for the light to change, a little kid holding his mom's hand stared up at my boyfriend and said, "Wow, foreigners are so cool, right?" We laughed about it later. Stuff like that happened all the time. Sometimes I even accidentally scared people just by speaking Japanese. When my mom visited Japan, groups of girls would constantly come up to her and ask if they could touch her hair. They'd never seen blonde hair before, and they were absolutely fascinated. She still tells that story to this day. I had a funny experience, but with a taxi driver. I was in Osaka and wanted to go somewhere a bit off the usual tourist path. The driver immediately started explaining the best tourist spots in a super exaggerated, friendly way, assuming I couldn't understand him. I replied in fluent Kansai dialect, asking about some tiny local shrine he'd probably never mentioned to foreigners. He literally slammed the brakes safely and stared at me for a good 10 seconds before cracking up. After that, the entire ride turned into a mini cultural exchange, with him showing me spots even most locals don't visit. I once had kind of the reverse situation. I don't really know sign language fluently, but at my favorite bar, they tried to introduce me to an old man who was supposedly deaf and mute. So I started simple, signed "How are you?" but he didn't react. I thought maybe he just didn't want to talk, so I tried signing "Have a nice evening." Again, nothing. Turns out the guy wasn't deaf at all. He didn't know a single sign. He just pretended to be deaf-mute to get attention and free drinks. What a sneaky goblin. Big thanks for reading. Share your own stories in the comments, and don't forget to check out our other posts. See ya!